After that introduction, I feel as intimidated as the first time I walked into a downtown Santa Monica meeting. Kathleen had invited me as the new city manager 3 years ago to talk to the annual meeting. I've been to annual meetings of business improvement districts. They're usually about 50 chairs. There are usually about 30 people in them. The staff often outnumbers the attendees. And so I was utterly unprepared to walk into a room full of extraordinary business and community leaders. Today I want to talk about the future, but in order to talk about the future, I'm going to touch a little bit on the past. So, what is the 3rd Street Promenade? It's 3 blocks. Is it a street? Is it a shopping mall? Is it an iconic destination? Is it the heart of our historic downtown? Is it valuable real estate? Is it an economic engine for the city's economy? Is it a model of urban design? I think the answer is it is all of these things, as well as a cherished place in the memories of people who've only visited our city once. But if you visit our city once, you're going to go to 2 places, the beach and the 3rd Street Promenade. So how did it evolve? How did we get here? 3rd Street was the main street for a booming American community called Santa Monica on the edge of the Pacific Ocean, the end of the Route 66. It had all of the local and national stores that you would expect in any booming downtown. But as the 50s and the 60s changed America, downtown ended up dying in thousands of American communities. The stores closed up, the people moved out to the suburbs, the retail migrated to the malls, and cities who were suffering tremendous financial stress stopped being able to maintain their downtowns. Santa Monica was determined to reverse this trend, and so they put a tremendous amount of time, money, and effort into an idea that seemed like a good idea at the time, which was to convert 3rd Street into a pedestrian mall. This was a popular idea in America. The idea was suburban malls are working, that's where people are going, that's where people are shopping. Let's copy those suburban malls without the air conditioning. And let's close off our streets. And so we created, in 1965, the Santa Monica Mall, without a roof and without air conditioning, but it's Santa Monica, won't people come? Well, they didn't. They stayed away in droves. And so in the 80s, as Santa Monica's downtown was really sagging and dreary, and there was even talk of tearing down the pier and starting over again, a group of visionaries, some of whom are in this room today, decided that there was another opportunity to create on 3rd Street a revived heart for the community of Santa Monica. They were bold and they were courageous, and they created in 1989 the 3rd Street Promenade. Now you'll remember in those days, missing persons. Let's see if I can do this. Nobody walks in LA. The idea that you would take a failed pedestrian mall and put millions of dollars into it, that you would go to the voters for their support, that you would ask long-suffering property owners to assess themselves to build and maintain this was a crazy idea. It was bold, it was courageous, and it worked. So why did it work? What were the formulas for success? Well, the paradox was that in a time when people were getting in their cars to go everywhere, people craved to get out of their cars and to be somewhere. And so there was a tremendous timing. There were the movie theaters. Westwood had been the place where you went to see a brand new movie because that was the only place you could see a movie the first week. These big theaters in Westwood. Well, in the late 80s, we were moving to Cineplex where you could go and there'd be 17 movies at the same theater. And so Santa Monica made the decision that it would only allow theaters on the 3rd Street Promenade. And so 3 of them opened with the opening of the 3rd Street Promenade. Outdoor dining in Southern California, a radical idea, was just beginning to be born in places like Old Pasadena. There were those topiary dinosaurs, right? That was a touch that, inspired by Brewery of Finkel's commitment to public art, that just created a magic. Before selfies and Instagram, that created a place where people could bring their kids and feel like it wasn't just a commercial place, that it was a place where real people would gather. And let's not underestimate the investment that was made by the city in parking, which allowed, because people got around in those days almost exclusively on cars, the parking was a visionary and expensive investment in success. But most of all, it was this idea that it was new, that it was different. And you recall that there was a shooting in Westwood. Westwood had done what I think happens so often in real estate. They decided to milk the value of the asset. And so the property owners there, they went to the retailers and the restaurants that appeal to the lowest common denominator. So it was a place that had really become a place for T-shirts and coffee mugs. And then there was a shooting. And then came 3rd Street Promenade, right? Almost right on the heels. Brand new movie theaters, outdoor dining, convenient parking, near the beach. The funny thing is that you can see the bollards there today. The idea was they hedged their bet, right? We're going to bet on a new pedestrian version of 3rd Street. But we'll keep the bollards there just in case we have to let the cars back in. Well, it was such a success. I've heard this story so many times from so many different people. It was hours before they closed the street. It was days before they closed the street. Some people say it was weeks before they closed the street. But almost immediately, the place was jammed. Those missing persons that didn't walk in LA, well, they came out of the woodwork. And all of a sudden, 3rd Street Promenade was the most dramatic, dynamic magnet in Los Angeles for people, And that's really the idealism that drove that courage and that vision of those original founders. People like Denny Zane, who was on the city council and mayor. People like John Jalili, my predecessor as city manager. People like Boris Dromoff, the designer of 3rd Street Promenade. People like Stephen Jones, who are visionary property owners who invested in the future. There was a tremendous sense of idealism, and here is the paradox that we have to remember. The best way to make money is not to appeal to the lowest common denominator. The best way to make money is not to invest in the flavor of the month. The best way to make money is not to set out to make money. The best way to make $1 billion worth of sales is to create a fantastic place, a place that people want to come to, a place that people feel is cared for, a place that people feel is local and unique. Lots of people want to make money. Very few people want to make great places. And the people who make great places, ironically, make the most money. So, where are we today? We're about to hit the big 3-0. The Promenade opened in 1989. And in 2019, it's going to be 30 years old. And we all see what's happening. There's a retail shakeout across the nation and across the world. The West Side Pavilion is closing down. You know, it was the flavor of the moment, and the moment has passed. The shopping mall destination with underground parking is over. And so is a lot of the retail concepts that have been such a vibrant rocket fuel for our economic success in downtown Santa Monica. There's increasing competition. Cool streets like Abbot Kinney, and a $1 billion investment by Westfield in their Century City Mall. $1 billion with a B. They've spent $1 billion on a makeover of that mall. So we see slowing foot traffic, particularly on the block closest to Wilshire. We see a rising level of vacancies. We see also on the part of the city a lack of reinvestment. We really haven't spent any money redoing any of the infrastructure in 30 years. We've maintained it, but we haven't rebuilt or replaced any of it. And also a loss of local identity, a sense that, yeah, we have the highest grossing Apple store in California. Yeah, we have America's iconic brands. But what happened to the Midnight Express bookstore? What happened to the sense that this was Santa Monica's downtown, that this was a place where Santa Monicans would want to be, a place that when you came here, you weren't in Anywhere USA or any airport in the world, but you were in a place where if you went to Lago Restaurant, that you would feel like you were part of the family instead of part of the crowd. So this is a disturbing moment. And if we do what Westwood did 30 years ago, we will suffer the same fate. And you realize it's taken them 30 years to crawl back to what they lost, to what they surrendered, to what they abdicated, to what they didn't realize they had until it was over. So, where do we go from here? We've embarked on something we call Imagining the Promenade 3.0. Santa Monica Mall was 1.0, not a big success. Promenade was 2.0, a roaring success. What about Promenade 3.0? What does that look like? I would say it involves 5 key elements. The first is back to the future, remembering that most of all, the promenade has to be a public place. It's not a shopping mall. It's a public place. The second element is we need a renewed public-private partnership. We stand on the shoulders of giants, the people who had the courage and the vision in 1989 to shut down 3rd Street Promenade and start over and spend their public and private dollars. We need that same kind of commitment in 2019. We also need the spirit of reinvention, right? After 30 years, it's time to rethink some of the established realities of what worked in 2009 or 1999 or 1989. We need to be thinking, as Gleam Davis reminds us, we need to be planning for 2050, not 1950. We also need to continue to do placemaking, and we need to make connections. So let's start with a public place. A public place is unique. And yet it appeals to some things about human beings that no matter what your race, your religion, what part of the world you grew up in, what your sexual orientation is, how old you are, really doesn't matter. People like being around people. They always have. Cities are about people being around people. That's where the economic innovation comes from, is people who rub shoulders and they learn things. There's young people, they meet in cafes, they meet in restaurants, they bump into each other on the street. People love people. And when people congregate, great things happen in great cities and in great streets. And we have to think also, though, about authenticity. This is Santa Monica. This is not Santa Barbara. This is not San Francisco. This is not Miami Beach. This is Santa Monica. We need to think about a public place that is uniquely ours, that takes advantage of our geography, our climate, our history, and our special sense of place, the people who live here. We need to rebuild an even stronger public partnership because, frankly, this is going to cost some money. It's not going to cost $1 billion. And by the way, I don't think Westfield will ever make back their $1 billion. It's going to be more money, though, with more zeros than any of us in this room are comfortable with. Let's be real. The promenade has not been basically touched in 30 years. And just fixing up the dinosaurs costs what, $350,000? $500,000. So if just fixing up the dinosaurs costs $500,000, let's be real. We are looking not just at the future of the 3rd Street Promenade, we're also looking at the future of our economy. We live in a changing world. Andy Agel and Anuj Gupta are leading our effort to look at an economic sustainability plan for the future around changing customer choices, changing mobility patterns. The way in which we work is changing in America and in the world. So a public-private partnership has to be different than the one that was built in 1989. It has to be one that recognizes that we're a different country in a different place. The idea of reinvention, we don't need to start from scratch. We have an extraordinary place, but we need to have people look at it differently, right? Because who in Southern California hasn't been to the 3rd Street Promenade, right? Everybody has. So what's going to bring them back, right? What's new, what's fresh, what's also timeless that people will want to come back rather than say, well, let's go to that new cool place, Abbot Kinney. Let's go to that new cool place, the Westfield Century City. What is it about our place that's going to be unique, special, and ever-evolving, ever-vital, and dynamic? The guy who invented the Visa card, and believe it or not, somebody invented the Visa card, he said, it's easy to get new ideas into people's heads. The hard part is getting the old ideas out, right? So if people think, oh yeah, we've been to the 3rd Street Promenade, we've been there a lot of times, let's go to the new place. People need to always be coming back to something that's fresh in our downtown. I think that's largely about placemaking. The ice rink, the topiary dinosaurs, the parklets, this is all about placemaking. What Nagin Singh is doing at the pier of reinventing how we look at our beloved iconic Santa Monica Pier, that's all about placemaking. It's about events. It's about art. It's about music. It's about pop-up retail. It's about the ever-evolving kaleidoscope of urban life that people just love 18 hours a day, whether they live here, whether they work here, whether they visit here. This place has to have that special magic. Rick Caruso has made $1 billion by understanding that people like places that are clean, that are safe, that are beautiful. And he talks about, in his projects, the Grove and Americana and Glendale, the experience starts when you get out of your car, or in our case, we hope, get off the expo or the bus. The experience starts then, and it goes all the way. It's not an experience inside the four walls of a store or inside the four walls or out in the courtyard of a restaurant. The experience is visiting Santa Monica, and it should be safe and beautiful and clean from the moment you set foot in Santa Monica's downtown until the moment you say a fond farewell. Placemaking is also about what we do every Wednesday and every Saturday, and have been doing now every Wednesday for 30 years. Laura, placemaking is the farmer's market. That is a place, that is a magnet that has changed the way we eat in Southern California and made a food critic into one of the most beloved icons of our region. So Rick Caruso says, what makes the difference in creating wonderful retail is creating a wonderful experience. So if we think about, well, how do we get the shoppers back? Let's find the latest and greatest new retail trend. We're being short-sighted. We have to think about creating a great place. So, we spent a tremendous amount of time on the downtown community plan, and thank you to David and his amazing team of planners, Jing and Peter and all that worked on the downtown community plan. The planning commissioners, Richard McKinnon is here, worked very hard on this. It took us years, but it's an amazing community plan, and it draws upon a balance between respecting our history and our historic character and fabric and scale with an embrace of vitality and the future and a continuing evolution, a graceful evolution, not a revolution in our town, but to have new projects fit in and complement what's already here and feel like they're an organic part of downtown Santa Monica. And it's, of course, focused on a greater commitment to housing. So we have a built-in group of people who care about, live here in our downtown and who can work here and who can enjoy it. And it's also focused on a very different model of mobility. It builds on what Mayor Winterer said at the beginning. The people in 1989 were willing to make a commitment at a time when we were at the height of the drive-in society, the idea that everything was just going to be drive-by. Santa Monica put its future on the line around people walking and about people using public transit. So we've got some short-term challenges. Oh, I got to do this, excuse me. We just finished the Esplanade. $13 million commitment by my predecessor, Rod Gould, and a much larger team. It's extraordinarily successful. It violates every rule of urban design, right? Which is you need doors and windows. We've got a McDonald's and what? A hotel that's, you could maybe find the front door of the Wyndham, right? Four blocks, but every time that train arrives, and at the end of the day, you just see these pulses of people using that space. It's extraordinary. We have, let's see here. We have this extraordinary street called Ocean Avenue. I mean, it's just an amazing street with Palisades Park. And it's, by definition, 3 blocks from the 3rd Street Promenade, although sometimes it feels like it's a world away. So we have to connect 3rd Street and Ocean. And we do that every Wednesday and Saturday when we close Arizona. We need to think about closing Arizona, just like the people were willing to make the decision to close 3rd Street so many years ago, so that we connect. And of course, a key piece of public property is the 4th and Arizona project. And that has to contribute to the sense of connections and the sense of public place in our downtown, so that we connect through the Santa Monica Place, which is such an extraordinary anchor between the 3rd Street Promenade and the Esplanade. We got to put all these pieces together so when you get to downtown, you're not coming to 3rd Street Promenade, you're not coming to our pier, you're not coming to Ocean Avenue, you're not coming to Palisades Park, you're coming to a place where all of those work together seamlessly and organically. So, I was jumping ahead to the short term, so let me talk about where we are now. Look, number one is safety and security. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. As Julia said, I think we have to face the raw truth. Crime is up. Crime is up in downtown. Our new chief, Cynthia Renaud, is a crime fighter, committed to leading an extraordinary team that you all see out there every day to meet this growing threat. We also have a significant uptick in homelessness. That's part of a regional trend, but that's not any comfort. We've got to deal with it here. Sergeant Aklufi, who leads our help team, Peter Lashley, who's the downtown neighborhood officer, Captain Jacob is. This is a team of folks who are committed to working with all of you in this room to improve safety and security in our downtown. We have to do that. We have to do it together. We also need to recognize that there's a compassionate part of our heart that is unique to Santa Monica. And our approach to homelessness is not to police our way out of it, not to arrest our way out of it. Our way is to put people in housing, to connect them to services, to get them the help they need. And groups like OPCC and groups like Chrysalis and the 4,000 connections that your ambassadors made to get people connected to the services they need. We have to step up our game on that. And Maggie Willis and Elisa Orduña and Brian Hargrave and some of the really amazing people in this room who are every day working on this extraordinarily difficult regional and national problem. We've got to make a difference here. It is morally and economically unconscionable that 56,000 people are going to sleep outdoors tonight in Los Angeles County. So we've got to deal with vacancies. And frankly, I think, look, this will be the most unpopular thing I'll say here today. But I think landlords need to be realistic about ground floor rents, right? We've got, if we're not going to have a bunch of vacancies and butcher paper on our ground floor on 3rd Street Promenade, people have got to either put in pop-up retail or suck it up and get people who are going to add to the street's vitality. Holding out for a jackpot is going to kill us. We've got to fill those vacancies because people don't come to places with lots of for lease signs. So we've got to. I think the property owners have to be realistic about this. And the last thing we need to do is to go for the cheap route, for the Taco Bells and the things that will bring down the value of the downtown real estate and bring down the experience that people have when they come to downtown Santa Monica. We also have to build, as I said a number of times, we need champions for this new public-private partnership for Promenade 3.0. So Kathleen and the board and Julia, Katie Lichtig, who represents the city on the downtown Santa Monica board, we actually, look, nobody talked about it, but we dodged a bullet earlier this year. There were people who said, you know, maybe this downtown Santa Monica isn't all it's cracked up to be. Maybe downtown Santa Monica, Inc. has lost touch. Maybe it's not the biggest, most vital, most successful business improvement district in California. Maybe a bunch of new people should come on and turn the place upside down because we've got some economic challenges. Well, they were flat wrong. They were ill-informed and uninvolved. And I think most of them have gotten religion. They now realize what an amazing engine DTSM is. But we can't rest on our laurels. 93% approval isn't enough. That was actually a challenge. It was a 93% vote for change. Change and improvement, not change and upheaval, not throw the bums out, but let's all pull together and really make this work. And I want to thank John Werfel for the effort he's made. Selling French fries may not seem like the most glamorous thing for a successful real estate entrepreneur. But frankly, recapturing that corner is a huge, important stake in the ground for the future. So what are we going to do? What are the next steps? So the next steps, build a public-private partnership. We're going to need some design talent to figure out what small but significant changes in investment we need to make in the promenade, physical infrastructure to revitalize that wonderful street. And then we've got to fund the dream. And so Gigi Decavalis-Hughes and some of the other people in the audience on the private side are going to have to put our heads together to figure out how we're going to pay for all this. So I jumped ahead of myself. The promenade is a street. It's a very special street. And like the great streets around the world, the Las Ramblas in Barcelona, the streets of Florence, Italy, Burke Street Mall in Melbourne, Australia. These build on timeless ways of building. 6,000 years of human civilization have taught us that people, they like doors, they like windows, they like things built to human scale. For the previous 50 years before the 3rd Street Promenade, America decided to build its cities around cars, not people. It was a fundamental blunder. It had huge social, environmental, and economic catastrophic costs on how we live, and we've decided that there's a better way to live than building cities around cars. It's rebuilding them around human beings, human scale. Ever since the Renaissance, human beings have not been slaves, they've not been serfs, they've not been peasants, they've been free citizens, and that started in cities. That started in places like Florence. And the streets of Florence are still great places to do retail. They're still great places to serve people food. And so let's rebuild around the timeless lessons of architecture and civilization. And let's remember what Rick Caruso taught about experience, what DTSM's market study has said about it. It is all about the experience. We have to put all this together. The 3rd Street Promenade is not an iconic destination all by itself. It's part of 3 miles of Southern California beaches. It's part of an iconic pier that's a symbol of America's promise and frontier. It's about a beautiful Palisades Park that's maintained by public and private resources and personnel every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's about the investment in public infrastructure like the Esplanade and the Expo line. Putting all of that together with the placemaking and every meal that gets served, every shopper that gets greeted, every visitor who gets helped, those magic moments that make all the difference in the world. So let me conclude. I don't believe that we are going to make the same mistake that Westwood did and watch either a big fall or a slow fade. I believe that the best days of Santa Monica are ahead of us. I believe that the beating heart of our downtown, which has compassion for the most vulnerable, which has ambition for the most ambitious, that Santa Monica's downtown is a place where people are going to want to work, going to want to live, going to want to visit for decades and even centuries to come. Back in 1989, they went to the voters and they went to the property owners and they said, invest in the future. It is time now, again, to invest in the future, to build on timeless principles, but also to embrace the vitality of a changing world. If you are a property owner in this audience today, if you are a business owner, if you work as a professional in our downtown, if you're an elected official, if you're a commissioner, if you're a city staff member, if you're an activist, or if you are that most important title of all, a citizen. The root word for citizen, by the way, is city, right? It doesn't have anything to do with what your papers say. It has everything to do with whether you want to leave the place you live better than you found it. That's the definition of a citizen. And if you're one of any of those categories in this audience today, it's time for us to do what those giants whose shoulder we stand on did 30 years ago. To dream big, to have guts, and to have vision about a better future. One of you in this room is the next Denny Zane. One of you in this room is the next Boris Dramov. One of you in this room is the next Brewery of Finkel. One of you is the next Stephen Jones. One of you is the next Elaine Polachek. One of you is the next Laura Avery, and by the way, we're hiring. One of you is the next Jan von Tilburg. And one of you, give it a few years, will be the next Kathleen Rawson. So think about that. It's a great opportunity as well as a great challenge. Santa Monica is an extraordinary place. Sometimes I have to pinch myself that I'm the city manager of this city and that I get to work with extraordinary people like all of you in this room, and that I get to have my daughters come and be proud of their dad for being the city manager of this amazing place. We live in a time of global change. We live in the planet. We don't live just in our own backyards. But we also have to remember it has to be local. It has to feel like this place. We have to be fiercely loyal to this place that's now 250 years old next year. 250 years since the Spaniards named this place Santa Monica. As the mayor said, it's all about placemaking. This is an amazing place. Let's make it better. This is a global moment for cities, but even more important, this is a moment for Santa Monica. Let's seize the moment. Let's make the most of the moment. If we do that, people will look back 30, 50, 90, 100 years from today and say, that was a generation who seized the moment. That was a generation that lived up to its potential. That was a generation that left this city better than they found it. Let's do that. Thank you very much.